Hello lovely people, welcome to another book chat, the regular roundup of stuff I've read at some point in my past. I've got 5 books to talk about this week, so we're just going to crack on with it.
Sophie Vlogs.
I have 3 fiction books to talk about, so I'm going to kick things off with Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho. I have become a bit of a Zen Cho fangirl lately, I am aware. This follows Jessamine, who has moved to Malaysia with her parents. They are originally from Malaysia, but they moved to America to raise her there. Her father is in recovery from cancer. They've had a bit of a financial hit from his treatment. And essentially, they've moved to Malaysia, they're staying with some family friends, and then one day, like, a voice in Jessamine head starts talking to her, and it turns out that the ghost of her armor is, like, taking up residence in her head. Because she has some unfinished business to do with a goddess that she was a medium for, the Blackwater Sister. There is a development in the works that is encroaching upon her temple, and the god is pissed. So Jess is kind of like thrown into this situation, kind of has to adapt to both like being able to see spirit, also where her life is at. She's in a long distance relationship with her girlfriend, but she's not out to her family. There's just a lot going on for her life. I feel like I've seen mixed reviews of this book, but I personally really enjoyed it. But I think I've ascertained by now that Zen Cho, as a writer, is someone who I just find very readable. I found this book a book that I kept wanting to return to. I really enjoyed being situated in Malaysia. I found like the sense of place was done really well for me. Like I could visualize a lot of the places. When she's going to visit the temples, when she's going to the more modern districts and having like Instagram-worthy food. This sense I had of place and of the different like pockets within that place, I really enjoyed. I also felt like this dealt very interestingly kind of with that concept of like possession or like being a medium for someone. Like Jess very much tries to establish rules for Arma for what she can and cannot do with a body that is not her own, and I kind of just appreciated like some explicit conversation about that angle of being a person who can channel other things, like when do you allow someone in, when do you have the right to not allow someone in. I just found this a very compelling read. It picked up pace a lot as it went on because there are a lot of different threads with people who are and are not invested in the development of this place. There is history between Jess's Arma and the rich guy who's the developer of the thing, and then also finding out more about the Blackwater Sister herself. That was part that I really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed how that particular figure's plotline was wrapped up at the end. I felt like there was like an interesting conversation there about perpetuation of cycles and healing and all of that kind of thing. So Zen Cho just continues to be an author that I really like. I'm definitely going to read all of her things. I think I have like one more that I haven't read, one or two. I don't know, I need to look into the rest of her catalogue, but one that I enjoyed. After that is a book that I read for my work book club. This is People Like Her by Ellery Lloyd, who I believe are a husband and wife writing duo. This has 3 perspectives in it, so I don't remember your name. Emmy is an influencer known as Mama Bear. She originally started off as a fashion influencer and then she pivoted into being like a mum influencer. So we have her perspective, we have her husband's perspective, who is a struggling author insofar as he had his first novel published a few years ago and it came out to like good reviews, but he's really struggling to write that second novel. And then there is a third perspective of an unnamed person who is quite obsessed with Emmy and who blames her for something that you eventually discover and is somewhat looking to seek revenge. So we picked this up for my book club because we were like, it sounded like a thriller that would be doing a lot of commentary upon social media and our interactions with it and influencer culture and that kind of thing. I think one thing, essentially I gave this a 2 stars, and most of the people, pretty much everyone in the book club, was kind of on a similar footing of, we all found this very easy to read, but we also all wished that it went a bit further than what it did. I think one thing that we all felt was, it took a really long time for anything to happen. A lot of this book is just like following Emmy, and sometimes it raised some really interesting points. One of the most chilling aspects of this for our reading experience was that at one point someone starts using pictures of one of their children and is like role playing as if they are the mum of a sick child and using their child's pictures for it, which is something that really happens. And that was one of the aspects that a lot of people found really affecting. And I think what we'd hoped is that there would have been more aspects like that that really make you think about the internet culture we have and like how in that situation the platform of Instagram does absolutely nothing to help you and that kind of thing. Whereas it felt like what most of this book was Emmy being like, I work really hard at being relatable, even though my life is actually secretly perfect. I have to make myself seem worse than I am so I can be relatable to people. And it's really like a full-time job and people underestimate me, but then also being an absolutely terrible person. So both Emmy and her husband are rubbish people. Like, they're not nice people. And that in some ways makes it slightly hard to root for them fully, because I don't wish harm on these people, but you know, it's when you're sitting with people that continually prove themselves to be terrible and also experience like no repercussions from that, it's just a little bit hard to then root for them to be like successful. And also this plot line with this person who has a lot of blame and is seeking revenge upon Emmy. I had some stuff about how that was wrapped up in the end that I felt kind of undercut it a bit. I felt like we leaned slightly on this person's crazy rather than a little bit more of an examination of like what it is actually like parasocial relationships, the negative side of that. It kind of felt like this person was being billed as like a bit of an outlier of a person rather than looking at like how easy it is to get over attached, how easy it is to project upon people, that kind of thing. I don't know. It's not a book that I think is like absolutely awful. It's just a book that I like perfectly enjoyed reading but feel like I'm going to really forget all of the details from quite quickly. The final fiction book I'm going to talk about is Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. This is the first book in a trilogy. We follow Yumeko, who is a half kitsune who has been brought up in this temple by these monks. Very early on you find out that these monks have been guarding something very precious, and when some demons are sent to destroy the temple, she is tasked to take this precious item to a place of safety. Her story intersects with Hatsumi, who is the bearer of a sword that has a demon trapped within it. As such, he's been raised his whole life to have a separation from his emotions, because if he experiences emotions that are so strong, the demon could take control. He doesn't know that Yumeko is a kitsune. He doesn't know that she actually has the item that he is after for his clan. They go on this journey to essentially deliver this thing. This is described a lot as being very much like an anime, and I really do get that sense. A lot of this book is them journeying and then having smaller conflicts or interactions with things, and it really did give me that vibe. And that was really fun in a lot of ways. It was fun to have these little like episodes of conflict and then you move on to the next thing. I will say that as a result, I do think this could have been shorter. It was quite a long book and most of it was just like little things like we clash with this thing, we clash with this thing, we overcome this thing, and it's like, it was great and it was fun, but it also didn't really like progress us very much until we got to a certain point and then everything kicked into gear and then we did progress. There were a lot of really cool ideas in this. I found it immensely readable. I am in no way invested in the love story, but then I usually am not. There's a lot of this that to me is very classic YA, and that's not an insult, it's just it has a lot of like tick boxes of what I would associate with like paranormal romance YA. I enjoyed Yumeko as a character. I thought she has a lot of innocence about her because of her sheltered upbringing. She has an interesting conflict within her because of being half kitsune, about how much there's this concept of like, will she lose her human side of her and that kind of thing. She was very sweet. Hatsume I found harder to connect with because the very like nature of him is that he's not supposed to experience emotion that strongly, so he was just a bit of a blank for me. There are some side characters in this that I definitely really enjoyed. I'm just not sure if I'm going to continue the series. I don't feel invested enough. Like, I feel like I could never find out what else happens and that would be fine, because I perfectly enjoyed reading it, and it was a fun little drabble, but also I don't have a drive to find out, like, what's going to happen. I would really love to hear from you if you have read the series though. Like, is it something that I should continue with? Let me know. I'm just going to end on my two non-fiction books. So the first of these is Trieste and the Meaning of Nowhere by Jan Morris. Jan Morris is a writer who I'm exploring a bit at the moment. She's been popping up in some book chats, as you may have noticed. This is just sort of like a meditation upon the city of Trieste. I think I'm finding that one of my favourite things about Jan Morris's writing is her ability to conjure a sense of space and of place. This was a very reflective novel, and some of my favourite bits in it were just like how she was capturing this city, and it's a city that is like an in-betweenness, like the different countries that have claimed Trieste over time have had a mark, the different peoples that have come from different places that make up Trieste. It's this interesting, like, it almost made me feel like it's just like this little entity that exists slightly in like a sphere of its own self in between other places. I don't know, there was this like transient nature to it, there was this in-betweenness nature to it, and especially because of Jan Morris's experience of being there. Like, she was there when she was in the army as a much younger person, and then she's returned there throughout her life, so you have this mix of like her looking back on when she was in the army and she was like placed there, her looking back on some of her more recent times there in completely different situations and roles. Yeah, there's like this interesting atmosphere to this, and although when she was placed there it was the Second World War, she goes further back and she looks at the history of this place, and she really like just, I've come away with this sense of what her experience of this place was like, as well as an understanding of what the history of this place was like. So it was I think this is my favourite Jan Morris that I have read yet. So definitely one I would recommend if you are interested in travel writing, and although she says that this is not travel writing, I do think that it gives you a real sense of, there's a travel writing aspect to it, where you understand this place and you understand the history of this place and her travelling around this place. I don't know, it was wonderful and I really, really liked it. And then the final book I want to talk about is Tiny Moons, A Year of Eating in Shanghai by Mingya Powles. She's kind of exploring her Chinese-Malaysian heritage. It's a year of eating in Shanghai. It's when she was living in Shanghai for a year, and she walks you around. It has these really lovely illustrations throughout that show you the different types of food that she's talking about. And there's a wonderful little meditation in this as well that's running through, that's like food memories she has from her childhood. And then she grew up in, I think it was New Zealand. Yes, New Zealand. So then she was away, and then like returning and eating these foods, but then learning all the new foods that she'd never experienced. And just, I found this made me want to eat so many different types of dumpling. And I just found this very evocative. It's only a little dinky one, and I dipped into it. I read this while walking around fields on my break at work, which was a lovely experience, but it also made me very hungry. So she's a food writer that I now would say that I really enjoy. I would be really interested to see what else she writes, and I just think this was a really sweet, lovely little dip into a world that is not a cuisine that I've really eaten a lot of, but now I really, really want to. That's everything I want to talk about this week. As per usual, I would love to hear your thoughts on anything I've talked about. Please do leave a comment down below. Otherwise, I hope you have the loveliest of days, and I will see you next time for something different.